First of all, I'm a little surprised that our last video has not like gone crazy viral because like what is YouTube for in 2022 if not like two guys talking about Batman for an hour? I wonder if maybe our finger was just not on the pulse, you know what I mean, in terms of like speaking about something in a relevant manner, which is why it's good that today we're going to talk about a movie that came out in December.
Yes, I agree. One thing about the Little Brothers, we strike when the iron's hot.
Yeah, although before we do jump into Spider-Man, I know we should talk about the hashtag no new jokers of it all and the clip that came out shortly after our episode.
Wait. Do we talk about that now or do we talk about it like at the end?
Like tease it now and then talk about it at the end?
Yeah, like let's say like so we don't have to deal with like the skip ahead to if you want to hear Spider-Man stuff. Let's just say we'll end this proper, and then we'll say at the end of this episode we're going to talk about the Batman and the released cutscene.
Okay, I'm in. I love it.
Okay,
all right, let's do
cool.
that. Okay,
Cool.
So Spider-Man No Way Home. Let's talk about our relationship to Spider-Man. I think we love him. We love Spider-Man.
He's arguably our favorite comic book character, mostly due to the fact that of longevity, right? Like Spider-Man was our first superhero that we loved.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly due to the animated series.
Yeah, and like you just
at least for me.
But also like he's just a relatable guy. Like the Batman
Absolutely.
and the X-Men animated series were happening at the same time or relatively around the same time. For some reason, the Spider-Man animated series sticks in my head more than any other, which is crazy because the music for the X-Men one is the best. But beyond that, like the Spider-Man one is the one that sort of like lives the most in my head. And I was particularly excited for a Spider-Man Doctor Strange story for that reason.
Me too.
I remember a lot of Doctor Strange Spider-Man business in the animated series. But Spider-Man, big superhero in our lives. I mean, one of my youngest son's middle name is Parker, and it is for Peter Parker. Like when I told my grandmother that his middle name was Parker, she was like, "Oh, that's great because there's a cousin on my side named Parker." And I was like, "Okay, but just so we're clear, he's not named after your cousin I've never heard of. He's named after Spider-Man."
We adore Spider-Man, as most people do. I mean, I think most people feel this way. But
I agree. I think Spider-Man is a very a beloved character.
Yes.
And in a way that is held closer to hearts than Batman, who I think is also a beloved character, but in a different sort of way.
Well, I think you're spot on when you said relatable. I think that's like Peter Parker's bit. It's like we have the X-Men, we have the Avengers, but who are we? We're Peter Parker.
Just some neighborhood kids.
Well, and I think Peter Parker is often used throughout storylines like how a person would respond, how your everyday person would respond, like when he's dealing with Avengers level threats or something like that. He's I think he's that in the movies, but I also think that he like when he shows up in Endgame, when he shows up in Infinity War and he's like, "What are we doing, man?" And Iron Man's like, "There's a wizard, there's people from space, like that's what we're doing." Like,
what's really funny is I didn't really appreciate how funny that initial Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Iron Man interaction is in Infinity War until I watched one of those audience reactions compilations on YouTube one time where like literally the video is like an hour long. And it's like almost every single time a live audience reacted to anything in Infinity War and Endgame, and it's like a theater bootleg, right? So it's also hard-coded captioned, and so you can really hear, you can tell what people are saying even though the audience is going nuts. And there are just so many tiny little jokes between Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland in that first set of interactions. It's so funny. I don't think I've visited Infinity War as many times as I have Endgame, so I think I need to go back.
I watched Infinity War like once a week when it came out on digital for like 6 months. Like I watched that movie so much. I don't know why. I think it was just like where I was at in my life.
Mhm.
But because I was having like horrible back stuff, and sleeping was really hard for me. So I would get up at like 5 a.m. and I would just put War on while I was doing stuff.
I love a movie in the morning, man.
Yeah,
Early
yeah.
morning movie is the best. Okay, so now I don't know about you. I would say, generally speaking, I'm a very big fan of the Tom Holland Peter Parker. Which is, I sort of had to remind myself that, because my most recent experience was obviously Spider-Man Far From Home, which I
Yes.
was not wild about.
No, me either.
And I've only seen it one time. I've sort of been afraid to go back, but I actually think now I'd be more charitable toward it.
I don't know that I would, mostly because my main issue with it are, okay, so first of all, Tom Holland, the perfect Spider-Man. Say what you will about the others. Say what you will about any issues with the character, whatever. Tom Holland is a perfect Spider-Man. I think that Jake Gyllenhaal is an amazing actor who really killed Mysterio. Like, he did a great job, except for the fact that, oh my God, how do you do this to me? You take a guy who is like, sometimes different variations of the character are sometimes like a VFX guy and stuff like that. I like the idea of using him as the creator of Barf and everything like that. But then it's just like, oh no, he's not really anything. He made it all up. He's all fake. He's not, he just wants to pretend to be a real superhero. And then you lead to the dumbest third act fight of any of this, of the MCU, which you put Spider-Man up against a bunch of drones when your villain was Mysterio. I was so angry that that's how they took the final fight. I just thought, for me, the best battle in that is when Spider-Man is actually like taken by the technology, and like he ends up getting hit by that train at the end of that whole segment.
Yeah.
That was so comic book. That was so animated series Mysterio. Like, everything's like he's imagining all these different things. That we needed that as like kind of your final battle.
Yeah, I would say that I don't even know that my issues with Far From Home went that deep. I think it had a lot more to do with it just feeling kind of rushed and kind of tangled, and just sort of not,
Yep.
like, very first drafty. And it felt like it had been sort of fast tracked after Endgame to like do something. And I don't know.
Interesting.
If there's one thing one of the most appreciative things I will say about No Way Home is that No Way Home feels so well structured and written, and so well thought out in terms of there's so many different meta layers of No Way Home that you don't even, a lot of it I don't even think really hit me until the credits were rolling, and it was doing the, like, that song that's like 3 is the perfect number, and I was like, oh, this is goodbye. Like, this is goodbye to Spider-Man, I think, for the MCU. And in sort of going back through the movie, really retroactively realizing that what I was just watching was the end of an origin story that took 3 movies, well, actually more, took 6 movies to actually get to. And the only reason we're getting into it now is because we're probably done. Like, it just felt, I don't know. I loved that part of it, I guess.
I don't.
Well, we'll get to whether or not this is the end for Spider-Man.
Well, no,
in the MCU,
no. I mean,
but
I mean, more like, I just think, number one, if you don't have, I think that, okay, so to speak on your issues with Far From Home, I think that speaks to the background issues that we were having between Sony and Marvel at the time. Sure. And I think that there was a lot of, like, for me, I'm not going to claim that like one corporation is better than another, right? But like, Marvel is I trust Marvel. I do not trust Sony. And I think that a lot of my issues with this franchise has to do with my distrust of Sony and how I just don't think that they're as well put together as Marvel movies are.
Yeah, I think there's a very simple reason for that. And this is going to sound very LinkedIn-y, but it's about their approach to problems, right? There's a screenwriting term called lampshading, which is like if there's a problem in a script, you sort of like just call attention to it, right?
Right.
I think that Sony has a more traditional approach, a more lampshady approach to story problems, and the way that they try to kind of like they're really manifestly trying to create some sort of shared universe, some kind of like IP they want people to care about. And it's like they know you're not going to. They know you don't care about Morbius. They're the ads for Morbius are like, please care about Morbius. Please associate it with other aspects of a forming shared universe that you like better, please. And it just won't work because it's the approach to a problem is they treat it like a problem. And not to like fall all over Kevin Feige, but one thing that I know is true about Kevin Feige from the things that he says is this dude loves problems. This dude, he approaches problems as storytelling opportunities. And that is the operating principle of the entire movie, No Way Home. It's what did people have problems with about literally every Spider-Man story we've ever told ever? And how can I create a multiverse time travel story that fixes every single problem that anybody ever had? And how can I make that the story? How can I make the problems the story?
I think that Kevin Feige is like my God. So I'm kind of fine with, okay, but you also have to consider that Kevin Feige was working on the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie.
I know,
he was
I just learned that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I saw him, the way that I found it out was I was watching like a behind the scenes thing on one of the MCU films, and it showed him sitting next to Sam Raimi, and he's like super young. And I was like, oh my God, so that's why this guy's so good at it. He saw everything, and he saw the mistakes, and he saw this guy learned master storytelling over a long period of time.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's talk about Morbius for 2 seconds and say, here's why. I have written down as one of my kickoff topics. Early reviews have come out on Morbius.
I can't believe there's even an edited together version of Morbius that exists anywhere.
I know. So early reviews have come out unanimously bad. Okay.
Well, of course.
Okay, but wait. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing any of this other than we're trying to? Okay, so you're trying to set up like a Sinister Six thing, maybe? Okay, maybe. Okay, but I don't understand how Venom would be brought into that, because Venom, the way that they're portraying Venom would not be down for any sort of villainous squad.
No, villain.
He'd be more on.
Venom is
he'd be more on the side of.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's what they're potentially doing with Morbius as well. But like, and now there's Kraven the Hunter is in production.
Who's playing Kraven the Hunter?
Man, it sucks that I can't remember his name, but it's Aaron whatever. He's Quicksilver in the MCU. He's
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yes.
Okay.
I know. He's like ripped now and stuff too. So I'm like, all right. But also, first of all, Kraven, I hate Kraven because he's so brutal. And like all the Spider-Man storylines with Kraven are just like Spider-Man getting his ass kicked for, pages and pages. But
well, the good news is, and again, you probably won't have any Spider-Man in this movie to deal with. It'll probably be something else.
You won't, but it'll
be Madam Web.
Okay, the same thing. First of all, actually, if we're talking Madam Web, I'm like, so down for that, but it's because it's Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney are the two people that they've cast for that. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
saw that.
I'll watch that. No, but here's the thing. Why any of this? And if you want to make a villainous squad movie or something like that, just do it. Don't give me 6 origin stories. I don't care.
Right.
And there's so many more opportunities to fail there. Focus on one thing and make that happen if that's what you feel like you need to do.
I think last time, I can't remember, but I think in our last episode we sort of expressed admiration for the DCEU, like we're not doing a shared universe, we're just going to do whatever we want plan. And I really think the moment for building a shared universe in the slow incremental way that the MCU did, I think the moment has passed. I think you got to find a new way in, you know? I think the door, that slow walk toward a shared universe, it's not going to happen. You got to take a more clever approach.
And this, now granted, this is because of releases being moved and everything, but this is already taking way too long, Sony stuff. Okay, and also you have Jared Leto in interviews saying things like this. Hey, Jared, so, I mean, when's Spider-Man going to be introduced? Like, you know, do you think that Morbius is going to go up against Spider-Man? And he says something like this. Well, you know, it's not really a question of if, it's a question of when. And like, that's what Tom Hardy was doing since the first Venom movie. And it's just like, this is fucking too much. This is just too much, man. And like, as a person who loves Spider-Man lore, if I'm out, then, oh shit, you are in deep waters. Because I like everything.
Yeah, I mean, you were like, you subscribed to the DC Comics app, like, you know, you're a
ground floor. I was a ground floor sign up on that. I like, to the point that I think that they gave me like 2 free years because I signed up so early. Okay, but anyway, boy, just Morbius, don't do it. Here's the thing. Before we go.
Oh, wait, I have a quick question before we go any further. this just occurred to me. Do you think the reason there's only 5 villains in Spider-Man No Way Home is because they were like legally prohibited from Sony by having 6? Because that would make it the Sinister Six, and they're one short.
Maybe I never considered that. You know what?
Unless you count Venom.
We'll talk about the movie, but one of my main gripes was like, how come you didn't bring any villains from a universe that we haven't seen yet? Like, how come we didn't?
Yeah. How come there wasn't a Spider-Man we haven't seen? Like, why not, right? I mean, it's sort of I think it's too legally tricky to introduce Miles Morales at this point. But why not, right? And why only have Jamie Foxx allude to him?
Yeah.
I mean, that was I love that moment between Jamie Foxx and Andrew Garfield when he's like, I just thought you were gonna be black.
Yeah.
But yeah, why not that? And then here's something else. I'll tease this now and probably get back to it. Molly in our comment section last time was talking about this restorative justice approach, and is this signaling a change? Short answer, I think no. And the way that I know that the answer is no is because none of Tom Holland's villains were in this movie. So every single villain that Tom Holland had to face, the stakes were theoretical, right? He didn't have to go back and reckon with Michael Keaton,
right,
know, or someone else that that affected his world.
How did they not bring anyone in from that?
Because that would be 6.
Yeah, that's true. Wow. Okay, so I have one funny thing that I want to bring up before we get into this discussion, okay?
Sure.
I have in front of me a leaked 2011 character integrity obligations from Marvel to Sony, okay? This is a list of things, of requirements for Spider-Man.
Was this from the Sony hack? Is that when this came out? 2011?
I actually don't know.
That might be 2009.
I'm not sure.
Go on.
So I don't know. But I mean, this would be for Andrew Garfield's franchise, right? Because I think that his was 2012 was the movie.
Sounds right.
Okay, so just the background to this is that it's 2 lists. The second list is less important, but it's Peter Parker character traits, and the first one is mandatory Spider-Man character traits. It says Marvel no longer has any creative approval rights, but SPE must abide by the following character integrity obligations.
Sony Pictures Entertainment, right? That's what
Right.
SPA is. Okay.
Yeah. So Spider-Man, whether Peter Parker or an alternative Spider-Man character, must always strictly conform to the following mandatory character traits. Some of these have an asterisk next to them. Some don't. Okay. So character traits.
Wait, does that mean required field, like when you're filling out a form, or does it mean something else?
I'm going to tell you what it means after.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the requirements for Spider-Man: male, does not torture, does not kill unless in defense or self of or others, does not use foul language beyond PG-13, does not smoke tobacco, does not sell/distribute illegal drugs, does not abuse alcohol, does not have sex before the age of 16, does not have sex with anyone below the age of 16. Last one, not a homosexual.
Wow.
It says in parentheses, unless Marvel has portrayed that alter ego as a homosexual. Okay. The items with an asterisk are permitted while Spider-Man is wearing the black symbiote suit.
So which ones are those?
So
Can Spider-Man be gay when he's wearing the black suit?
No.
Oh.
Does not torture, does not kill unless in self-defense, does not smoke tobacco, does not sell, distribute illegal drugs,
So
does
okay.
not abuse alcohol. So how awesome would it be with a cigarette smoking, alcohol drinking, drug dealing Spider-Man? But no, he can't be gay.
These are very 2011 morals.
Right? And by the way, I'm not going to read the other list because it's all very it's like his full name is Peter Benjamin Parker. From the time his parents become absent, he is raised by Aunt May and Uncle Ben and stuff like that. But literally the second one, his full name is Peter Benjamin Parker, and we double down on he is Caucasian and he's heterosexual.
Wow.
Twice on that list, they were like, he's not gay.
It's very strange, the parts of what is considered to be essential, I guess. I have never understood when fans articulate those sort of concerns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever I hear people who are like big fans are sort of talk about this idea, and this recently came up when it came to this Pixar movie Turning Red, right? There's that review that everyone piled on where the guy was saying the movie wasn't relatable. I have genuinely never understood this idea that a character has to look like me or act like me in order for me to relate to them.
Absolutely.
Since I was a kid, I related to female characters in certain situations. I related to characters of different races, and what's obviously what I suppose sort of Jordan Peterson type would sort of find hypocritical for me is to say like, well, Zach, and yet you believe in the importance of representation and everything. How come like black kids can't relate to white characters? And it's like, well, I mean, they can sometimes, but it's about the ratio, to quote to quote Peacemaker. The ratio is suspect. So anyway, it's sort of troubling. I mean, I know that corporations, the moral perspectives that corporations take up in the name of continuing to make money have always been troubling and weird, but it's sort of weird to hear that kind of list coming from someone official and not from some Spider-Man blog.
Yeah, well, and why and there are certain things that you would understand that they made, why they made that list. Like if you were like if you're like he doesn't smoke,
mm-hmm.
that would be fine. But I think that opens you up to the door to being like, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do this, you know. But
I
in
feel like it would,
general,
yeah, I feel like it would make much more sense to have a list of the personality qualities, like that
right,
he is, that he's considerate but distracted, you know, that he's a community minded person, that like whatever, you know, he's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, right? Like,
right,
why don't we talk about the things that he is that are core to his being and not the things that he's not allowed to be? Like,
right.
it doesn't seem like the right approach. And but again, I'm speaking from 2022, right? And I think I would assume, because I mean, for better or worse, right? Like the morals of mass entertainment have been shaped to conform to the morals of millennials and Gen Zers, increasingly more and more Gen Zers and not millennials, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But
Yeah,
like, so the world has now been shaped according to the way that people like me think it's supposed to be. And in 10 years, the world will be shaped according to the view of people 10 years younger than me and the way they're supposed to, they see it. And the limitations of what I'm saying and how I'm thinking now will only be clearer to me then.
well, and
There's people
Sarah,
to whom it's clear to me now. The limitations of my thinking is very clear to them now, but it's not clear to me yet, unfortunately.
sure, Sarah explains it as a we're in a transitional culture, and so that's why you have this fervent backlash at times, because there are just groups of populations that just don't, that don't, I mean, want to do the work at all to even understand the topics,
Mhm.
but B, they see it as a change of their lives and need to press against that in some way.
Sure.
I think best way to go into the movie is maybe let's do our triple spirals so we
Oh,
know where we
sure.
stand when we
Yeah.
talk into this.
So to
Okay.
me, so in the language of our podcast, a triple spiral is your top three. So your
Yeah.
top three Spider-Man movies.
Top
All
three
right,
Spider-Man movies.
give me yours. What's your
Okay.
top three
So
Spider-Man movies?
coming in a strong number 3 is Into the Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, No Way Home. Number 1, Homecoming.
I have the exact same three, but just in a different order. I would say
Really?
I would say my favorite Spider-Man movie is Into the Spider-Verse. My
Favorite, number 1.
favorite, number one with a
Okay.
bullet,
Okay.
Into the Spider-Verse. Number 2, Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, No Way Home.
Excellent. Great list.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say about No Way Home. I thought I was dazzled by what happened in No Way Home. I had some sense of what I was going, like I knew Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were going to show up because the casting news was from so long ago, but I didn't know
Right.
for how long.
So we should mention that you saw it a little late. You saw it when digital.
I saw it when it
happened.
digital. Yeah.
By the way, biggest digital release of any movie ever.
Interesting. Okay. Well, so see, there's going to be an audience for this video yet.
I think that
if they made it this far.
The numbers that I saw, which I don't know if I'm 100% accurate on this, was 2 million in the first week, which equals like $42 million. So here's the deal. So yeah, Zach saw it a little late. I know you blocked a bunch of stuff on Twitter and everything like that. Mm-hmm. But did you have, so you were certain that they were in it at this point? But
I thought, yeah, I knew they were going to be in it, but I thought maybe they were in it for like one scene. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Or like almost just kind of like appearing vaguely in the background or something. And
right.
It took them so long to turn up into the movie that I thought I was right for a long time.
Me too. And it's so funny that once they show up, it's like, nope, this is the movie now. We're here.
Yeah, it's true.
So let's talk about the Andrew Garfield reveal.
Oh yeah, it was so delightful when
it was so great.
I was so glad it was him too. I mean, I always loved Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I think those movies are good. I mean, I think that they have their problems, but I think like the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone is like off the charts. I just have so much fun with them. And I thought there were a lot of, the things I would say that are the most negative about those Spider-Man movies are like some of the CGI stuff. And I will say the same thing about No Way Home. I think I think No Way Home is like literally one of the ugliest movies I've ever seen in my life. Like I think it looks like garbage a bunch of the time. And especially coming off of
Sure.
the Batman. I mean,
Hmm.
the it's a real issue, I think, with the MCU in general going forward, is that they look worse and worse. And there are fewer and fewer people that seem to know what to do with it. I think the Russo brothers could really make it work. Now, people do pick on the visuals of Endgame and Infinity War, but I don't know. It's never been an issue for me.
No, me either.
But I mean, there were
Not
shots in No Way Home where I was like, why on earth is this a CG shot? Like, why on
yes.
earth are they
So
standing in a green screen cemetery? It looks
yeah,
horrible. There are
yeah.
scenes when Tom Holland is almost certainly actually standing in the room, and it looks like his head is CGI'd onto someone's body, and I can't figure out why. I think they're doing this like digital spotlighting thing where they're like literally creating like a ring of brightness around his face to make sure that you can see him pretty well in a larger composition, and it's horrible. It looks horrible.
Yeah. There's a I agree with you that there is a very real problem with the MCU's use of CG stuff.
Yes.
I think that what one hilarious moment is not in the movie, but in the gear up for Eternals.
Mhm.
Okay, name of that director is Chloe Zhao. Is that right?
Chloe Zhao. It's kind of a J sound with the
Okay,
ZH. Yeah.
so he's talking about her directing style, and he's saying like she used like all natural spaces and like it looks incredible, and he's like talking about showing it to Marvel executives, and he was like, I kept having to be like, that's all real.
Yeah. That's a
And I
real
was like,
sunset.
I was like, oh, you don't realize that this makes you sound really dumb because
Yeah.
we all know it's all CG in your movies. Like,
My
wow.
favorite, my favorite thing, the reason when I started to really realize like, oh, this is really becoming a problem was when I watched Shang-Chi. Because
Hmm.
there's this shot in Shang-Chi where like it's like some kind of flashback scene and a treasure chest like falls and spills open for some reason. I can't remember why.
Okay.
The treasure chest and the treasure coming out is all CGI. And it's like, you're telling me you couldn't get a chest and some gold? There's probably 100 of those at any soundstage in Hollywood or Atlanta or wherever you're filming this. You couldn't get someone to knock it over and film it
Yeah.
for real. You
Well,
couldn't do
but
that.
we'd have to pick it all up and
Well,
then reset the shot.
honestly, that's actually, you know why? It's because you have to hire unionized people to do things like that, to do practical effects. And the CGI animators are non-union, so they're cheaper. And so there's increasing reliance on it. And yes, Kevin Feige's great for his approach to problems, but he has very bad labor practices because we just the reason that Hollywood formed the way it did, right, was like on the strength of unions. I mean, the reason that Hollywood is in Hollywood is because they had to get away from Thomas Edison. And so that's why they moved to California. And from then, right, the people took like the power in the early days of Hollywood. And ever since then, with every increasing technological advance, the people on the top have found a way to give the working people a smaller slice of the pie. And we're in another one of those transitional times. And Disney Marvel being the lords of all IP is really bad for that, really bad for like working people in the movie industry making a decent living. Great for non-union CGI animation studios in South Korea and other places where these get outsourced to. I mean, South Korea is like that's like the headquarters of the world for animation.
Mhm.
I wasn't just pulling a random country off the map behind you. But like that's funny. It's about where my face is. My face is like about in South Korea on your map.
Nice.
So I don't know, it's bad and it's a problem. And I think more people need to shame Marvel about their movies looking like trash so that they will throw some of their unlimited money toward like working practical effects and practical set managing humans out there in the world, instead of doing everything in empty green rooms, which are looking increasingly airless.
It really is like, you don't think about it until you see it, and then it's kind of all you can see.
Oh, I
You
think
know what I
that's
mean?
true.
Like
I was
you notice it at some point in the movie, and you're
Mhm.
like, huh, that's very clearly fake. And then you're like, oh, everything looks really clearly fake.
Yeah, I went through this period of like not watching a lot of comic book stuff for a little while, like over the last couple of months, and I kind of caught up on like the art movies and stuff that I'd been meaning to see for a while.
Cool.
And a certain amount of the spell kind of broke, you know. So then I went back, you know, and I was watching like the Hawkeye TV show or something, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, this one is that show actually is probably an exception. It's
Yeah.
mostly survivable. Like I
Yeah.
remember the Christmas tree falling down, not looking so hot, but like for the most part,
I
it
don't
was
remember that.
for the most part it was fine.
I don't remember catching any CG stuff in Hawkeye. I mean, obviously it was there, but I didn't notice it as much, because that show feels a lot more grounded or something. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm kind of spotting something with No Way Home, which is that it's almost like you can knock Infinity War and Endgame or whatever, but like what they did there visually with that look, it looks very specific and it's perfect.
Mhm.
It's like things like, I'm sure, you know, you could go down a list of like, oh yeah, well, what about this? But it's like, you look at Thanos, and Thanos has stubble on his face, and he's like, oh my God, how did you make this guy? You know,
It's like it's cohesive. That's the
yeah.
thing. I would say
And
that's one thing.
it all looks like that. And like, truly, that does not take me out of it at all, despite like, you know, Tony Stark and Spider-Man in their Iron Man suits, like looking fake. But like,
Right.
it works within that film.
Yeah.
It's like they took that stuff and tried to do the exact same thing for No Way Home. They tried to make it look like those movies, and something fell flat.
Yeah. Which, to the point where like there's certain, like when you see Thomas Hayden Church, the like one time you see him, the actual actor, and a couple
Mhm.
other people, Reese Ifans too, like they're both I
Yep.
think only in one shot.
Yeah.
They might have actually come to set for one day, but I'm
Mhm.
not sure.
Right.
Like they
I
don't really look like people. They
No.
look like digital composites of people, which is just so strange. Like I don't understand why you can't just put the guy in a room for a day. Like, is it
Yeah.
because is it cheaper to pay Reese Ifans and Thomas Hayden Church for their likeness and their voice than it is to pay them for their actual physical presence in a studio for 6 hours? I have no idea. I don't know why these are the things that they seem to skimp on, but it's definitely. I agree with you that it was never a problem for me watching Infinity War and Endgame. And it's even rarely been a problem for me watching the many Marvel TV shows. At
Right.
various times during No Way Home, it was really a problem for me.
So let's talk about the movie generically
Mhm.
first, as far as like, um, you know, we can talk about individual scenes and stuff, but really, like, here's my one gripe.
Mhm.
I have more, but the one thing that sat out for me after the fact was having only villains from previous movies, and very prominent ones, specifically Willem Dafoe and Doc Ock, Alfred Molina, like felt like we're like reliving this stuff too much.
Oh,
You know, like
it was too much nostalgia.
it was yeah, it was like I I watched those movies. I loved those movies when they came out, but we're 20 years away from it. And I don't exactly need to have villains from my childhood show up and kill my favorite aunt and like be so important throughout the movie. I thought
Yeah,
like
I mean, yeah, I agree. I guess I set aside my concerns about too much nostalgia at the door because I knew that's all this was going to be.
Right.
And I do
I know.
like that it's still emotionally the crux of all the most emotional stuff was still our newest main characters. Um,
Right.
but I guess I didn't mind that Willem Dafoe was such a huge part of it because I never would have expected that. Like if you even going into this movie knowing what I knew, which was that I knew Green Goblin and Doc Ock were going to be in it from the trailers, and I knew that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were going to be in it at some point because of the casting news when it happened forever ago.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure of those two things. But I would, if you'd asked me, okay, lay out the plot for me, like what's going to happen, I never would have guessed any of that. Like I never would have put that story together. And I thought the sort of fun way the story assembles itself, starting from the problem created at the end of Far From Home,
Yeah.
was it was surprising at every turn. In the same way that Endgame was surprising at every turn, you know? It's like
Hmm.
I did not see it happening this way. I didn't see this, I didn't see um I didn't when Doctor Strange was trying to do the spell, I was like, oh, okay, so there's gonna be like a spell and there's gonna be consequences. But then he doesn't do the spell, and you're like, oh, now I'm still guessing. Like he calls the
Yeah.
spell off, and then it's like, okay, well, he actually botched the spell even worse than it appeared in that moment. And so
Yeah.
then I love this idea that the door that gets opened is people who know Peter Parker is Spider-Man. I thought that was
Yes.
such a funny and clever solution to this like we've talked about the multiverse for so long in these movies, and we've um, set it aside over and over again. Like even in the most recent Spider-Man movie, the multiverse doesn't exist. You know,
Right.
so that I guess that was such an interesting way to get into that.
I really enjoyed the fact that like the way that we didn't bring in any more Spider-Man was was when he's using the sling ring, when Ned is using the sling ring, he um is asking for Peter Parker, right?
Yeah,
He's asking for Peter Parker. So he asked for Peter Parker twice, but I was saying to Sarah, I was like, what happens if you ask for Spider-Man? You know, what comes through then? Because it could be those two guys, but it also could be other characters. You know, it's like you asked for Peter Parker intentionally because the writers of the movie did
yeah,
because it's like that opens us up to Peter Parkers are going to come through, not Spider-Man.
right.
Spider-Man could come in many different forms. You know, you could open it up and Doppelganger could walk through. You know,
Mhm.
um,
I guess I kind of like the fact that the multiverse as created so far is really not limitless. The multiverse is sort of like a metaphor for the catalog owned by Marvel. So like, like it's sort of like the only possible universes are the ones that have we've already seen created. Um,
mhm.
it's sort of a simple form of storytelling, but I guess if that's the only way it has that meta angle too. Like even with Doctor Strange coming up, right? We've seen this idea that there's like an evil Doctor Strange too
Yeah,
in the trailers, and that idea was almost created by What If.
right,
So I just like this idea that it's like, yeah, there's limitless possibilities, but actually, we're only going to be using this to sort of like self-reference for now. We're going to keep building it out, but there there are too many possibilities otherwise. There's too many
right.
possibilities, too many Spider-Man. That's a fun idea too, but it's a totally different story, right? Like
Hmm.
a room full of Spider-Man. That's a different story, and I
Yeah,
guess I like that they do seem to know what story they're telling.
I really do. Okay. So I am not a huge overarching thing in in these three movies is Spider-Man has trouble reconciling with the idea that he is Spider-Man and he kind of wants to live like a regular life, but with great power comes great responsibility, and so you have to do what you got to do. I really enjoy the fact that they bring Spider-Man in as like we're going to explain to you, like, we're going to put your loss in context, and we're going to make you like understand that this is kind of just a thing with all of us, where we all have this thing. When Aunt May says, with great power comes great responsibility, the first time in the theater, I was like, oh, you gotta
Really?
be kidding me.
Because
Like,
you knew
dumb.
you. Oh, you thought it was dumb? Oh,
Yes. Okay.
I went, oh God, she's gonna die.
Well, I kind of had already placed that, but she says it to him. And I was like, oh my God, that's so dumb. God, these people can't help themselves from just landing so hard on something. But when it comes back, when he says, when Tobey Maguire says it, or however the exchange happens, I like immediately started bawling, and I was like, oh my God, what a perfect way to utilize this. Like, where he's like, how do you know that? And he's like, because it's what Uncle Ben says. And then the other one was like, on the day he dies. Like, this is who we are, man. And I loved that so much. It hits a lot better the second watch. I watched it again when it came out on digital. And when she says the line the first time, I was like, oh my God. I feel like I have taken us off track of, we were talking about way before all of this, we were talking about when Andrew Garfield shows up.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just think, I mean, I've always loved Andrew Garfield. Everything I've seen him in, The Social Network is one of my all-time favorite movies. Never Let Me Go is so devastating that I almost can't bring myself to watch it again. I even loved Tick Tick Boom, despite the fact that it was directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. This is how strong my love for Andrew Garfield is. And so,
I fucking hate you, man. I can't believe dude, Hamilton is like, for people who don't know, Zach has not watched Hamilton, refuses to.
I have tried.
Okay, except for the fact that you haven't. And
I've tried to listen to the music of Hamilton.
Dude,
I just thought, I can't do
Zach,
this.
I cannot tell you how important this, I'd say movie, because it's a movie to me. I watched it on Disney Plus. But the Hamilton and Aaron Burr relationship, and Leslie Odom Jr. playing Aaron Burr is like the greatest thing ever. His performance
I'll
is
watch it at some
so
point.
good.
I will watch it at
It's
some
mostly
point.
because the whole time you're like, oh, so Hamilton's like a piece of shit. And like,
Right.
dude, it's great. Okay, but we're not going to talk about that. Don't worry. I can tell by your body language that you don't want to hear me talk to you about this anymore.
But okay, so Andrew Garfield was the MVP of this movie to me. I mean, I actually only got emotional at one scene, which was the scene when he saves Zendaya.
Oh my God.
His reaction to it was just so beautiful to me. And I absolutely loved it. The moment that he said like no and jumped off the building after her, it was like, it was over for me.
I actually called that.
Funny
enough. Yeah, I saw the trailer. She's falling, and I said to Sarah, Andrew Garfield is going to be the one that catches her. And me calling that did not change my emotional response to it whatsoever. It was incredible. And
it's the best moment in the movie.
I agree. I think that is the best moment in the movie.
And a lot of the scenes that, go on.
I think that they did a really good job, like giving Andrew Garfield the kind of cap on that he needed.
Yes.
And well, that he needed as an actor, and that we needed as an audience. And I think that I love the way that they introduce these characters in this new movie, and they still have their pieces of Spider-Man like so very clearly.
Yeah.
And I like that Tobey Maguire is like the exact same Peter Parker that he was in his franchise, but he's 20 years older. Yeah. And just like kind of old and kind of.
I love knowing. So you saw Molly's Game, right?
Oh yeah.
you know that the character Michael Cera plays is Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
So I like this idea that Tobey Maguire in real life is like this incredibly nihilistic, like high stakes poker, like annihilating other people's lives kind of guy is so strange to me. But
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not thinking about that for some reason because he's so good at being Peter Parker that
Right.
I'm not thinking about the fact that this guy might be evil in real life. I just felt like because he's Peter Parker, you know, that's how I have
Hmm.
the primary way I've known Tobey Maguire. And I liked the scenes between him and Andrew Garfield alone a lot too. They're talking about
Me
like
too.
back problems and all this other
Do
stuff.
you know the back problems bit with Tobey
Yes.
Maguire?
Yeah, he
Okay.
almost got replaced by Jake Gyllenhaal, which is why it's too
Yeah,
bad that Mysterio didn't show up at some point in here. They could have added another layer.
that could have been a pretty solid joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
The back stuff, for those who you don't know, he hurt his back. Tobey Maguire hurt his back filming Seabiscuit, and kind of used it as a negotiating tactic with Sony
Mhm.
to get a better deal as Spider-Man, but it almost worked against him, and he
Yeah.
ended up being replaced. I really liked that joke. I really liked, as far as behind like Easter egg jokes, I really liked how Ned is so bothered by the fact that Tobey Maguire is like, yeah, I had a best friend. He died in my arms after he tried to kill me, like, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and like Ned is really bothered by that, and even says, I would never turn against you or whatever. But the funny bit is that Ned's character is Hobgoblin.
Oh, really?
Yes, Ned, whatever his last name is, that character is Hobgoblin. So there's like a little joke there.
I didn't even know that. That's funny.
Yeah.
I loved Willem Dafoe saying I'm something of a scientist myself.
Yep.
That was incredibly funny. And
Yes.
a subtler one that I did not pick up on at the time, but read about afterwards was Andrew Garfield saying, no big deal, no big deal. When he's trying to he's explaining a really complicated, he's going to create the formula to fix Lizard.
Okay.
And he says no big deal, no big deal, and that's
Yeah.
supposed to be like, it's sort of a subtle dig at Amy, that Sony producer, because she, during the Sony leak, one of her emails about Spider-Man came out that people really made fun of, and she's basically saying like Spider-Man should do like extreme sports, like Spider-Man should do like BMX and stuff, and to kids this stuff is all very NBD, and NBD means no big deal, like it's all NBD to Spidey, you know. So she's like trying to lay out how he would be, you know, how to make him cool. And
That's great.
so having Andrew Garfield repeatedly say no big deal was supposed to be kind of like a little joke there. Now, speaking of that, by the way, whenever I think about the Sony email leaks, I think about the Community episode about it, when all their emails get leaked. Do you remember that?
I don't
It
think so.
has to
No.
it has to do with like in the same episode, like a controversial comedian is going to come to the school.
Okay. I
And it's
vaguely
like,
remember that.
yeah, and it's all very meta because Dan Harmon's emails like got leaked too during like the Sony hack thing, and I remember
Okay.
him making lots of jokes about it, like, you know, because a lot of he jokes about the fact that a lot of his emails haven't surfaced that he knows got hacked, and he's like, there's great stuff in there. But anyway, that is so Chris McKenna, who was
Yes.
a big instrumental community writer. I feel like maybe he had to do with the Mindy Project after, which is another very funny
That
show.
sounds right.
Chris McKenna is one of the two writers listed for Spider-Man No Way Home. And it's just so obvious that, you know, because it's meta layer after meta layer stacked on top of each other with all these little Easter eggs and references. And it's done very well. Like, I think a very well-known and very fair common knock against modern comedy is they have like a lot of these like gifable moments now, you know,
Okay.
where people seem to write scenes into shows trying to organically create or inorganically create the gifs that people will use, right? And that never happens. The shows that people gif all the time were never trying to do that, like Schitt's Creek is a good example of one that is like, you know, was never consciously trying to do that, and that's why it works pretty well. The one I always think of that makes me the angriest is like, there's a Parks and Recreation C plot one time where Ron Swanson's like writing letters to like Canada and like bacon and all this stuff, and it's just a nonsense plot that is just built for scenes where where
Yeah, because
Ron
they
Swanson
caught
goes
on that
like,
Ron Swanson
yeah,
things make it, yeah,
"Dear Canada, you're a hat." Signed Ron Swanson, and it's like, it's the worst. It's the worst.
sure. Yeah.
So anyway, what I would say is that all of the little meta nods and stuff in Spider-Man No Way Home are in there, but they don't call attention to themselves in a
Yep.
way, and they do feel like they still fit in the story. Like Willem Dafoe saying, "I'm something of a scientist myself." He actually did say that in the first Spider-Man
Yeah.
movie. It has since become a meme.
Right.
But it's still like, it goes by fast enough that it's like, it's not, he doesn't turn and look at the camera.
No. I really enjoyed that one for sure. I thought that it was strange that maybe it was just because people commented on it after the fact, so my position of it changed. But like Doc Ock saying "power of the sun in my hands" again was like, what? Are we just supposed to be reminding the viewers of his motivations? Like, or I don't know. I think
thought
it
that
was
was
more
meant
just to show.
that was like the last thing he said or something, right? Isn't it? I can't remember.
Right.
I thought
I think
it was
more
supposed to
just to
suggest
show
this idea
that they've been like like they were just reawakened kind of
Right.
thing, you know?
Yeah, the
Which
moment they left their timeline was the moment right before they died.
I really enjoyed that scene where they start to connect, like, oh, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Like, like, oh, I'm not supposed to be alive, like, or whatever, like that kind of thing. I thought it was very cool to, despite us later finding out that all of it was fake or whatever, like, I really enjoyed seeing Willem Dafoe sitting there at the table with Aunt May and being like, I went to somebody else lives in my house. And like, I really liked the idea of like these characters operating before we saw them. Like Tobey Maguire being like aware of what's going on with Spider-Man. Like, like where he's like, immediately when he sees Andrew Garfield, he's like, that's not your friend. Like, that's not your Spider-Man, like he's been paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
The satisfaction that I felt in the scene where they're in Ned's grandmother's house and they have Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield there, I was just like, this is so great. Like, this is everything that I wanted from this movie. Granted, it took us a little while to get here, but like, we're here now, and that's great.
I think Andrew Garfield works so well within the world of the MCU that I was like, I kind of want them to find a way to just like bring him back at a scene.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know. I just was like, I want him to be the MCU's one of their Spider. Like, I like the idea of there being. I felt the same way at the end of this movie as I did about the end of like Into the Spider-Verse, which is the same way I felt at the end of the movie Labyrinth when I was like 8 years old, which was, I was like, oh, I want them to have their magical friends back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I really wanted that to be the door to be open for that. And I think I think it is and it isn't. I think that the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield both showing such an interest in like the scientific implications of how they got from their universe to this universe.
Yeah.
It's like they're gonna go back and start working on a machine,
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's true.
but in terms of the financial and legal imperatives of what happens with Spider-Man now, it I don't know if it felt this way to you, but it really felt to me like at the end of the movie as the credits hit that I was like, oh, that's it. Like, oh, this is the end of Spider-Man.
I feel like this is the end of this franchise. I don't think we'll ever see Zendaya again. I don't think that. But I think that if you don't have Tom Holland cameo as Spider-Man in your movies, what the hell are we doing here? Now,
it is more likely that will happen than like Chris Evans. Like, people keep saying Chris Evans is going to come back, and I think
Evans is not going to come back.
It'll be much more likely that we would see Tom Holland again.
I think you're more likely to see Hugh Jackman show up as a Wolverine than you are Chris Evans as Captain America. But okay, I think that there's lots of great stuff you could do with multiverse. There's rumors that Tom Cruise is going to show up as a alternate Iron Man, and I'm like, oh my God, if you do that, I will stand up in that theater and applaud.
But the thing is, there's some there's some other trick. There has to be, again, because there always is. Like this in this Doctor Strange trailer, like why would they give you Patrick Stewart's voice if he's really going to be Professor X?
Yeah, they would.
Like,
so
there's some other.
Here's the thing. I think that what we're seeing from Doctor Strange stuff is like 2 minutes of that movie. I was like, why am I getting evil Doctor Strange? I just watched a cartoon about it and it wasn't even the best one out of those, out of that season.
You know what's weird is I agree. It was probably my least favorite episode of What If, and yet it's the one I remember the most.
Yeah, I agree.
Might be the music. I remember there being good, like sad music in it.
I really enjoy the fact that he just goes around taking evil magic monsters' powers. That's great.
Yeah, but, you know how like sometimes there'll be an episode of Rick and Morty that will end with like kind of a sad, on like this weird sad downbeat note.
Yeah, it's usually the season closer.
Yeah, that's true. But like, did you see this most recent season, the one where he like breaks up with the Alison Brie character, and there's that Kishi Vashi song or whatever that happens at the end? It's like it ends on such a strange, like dissonant, sad note, and I do kind of like that. Marvel seems to be getting into as they absorb more and more and more of the like Rick and Morty community world.
Yeah, I know.
It's funny that stuff is coming across too, like that same kind of tonal variation.
I think that Doctor Strange is going to be amazing. But I thought that, okay, so one Easter egg that I wanted to talk about in this movie that I have not seen anyone talk about. Okay, I have not seen this on any of the comic book guys' things, which makes me be like, this was for you and you didn't even see it. Okay, which is an interesting one. In there is a billboard at one point, and it says Mysterio was right. It was spray painted. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember seeing it?
Yeah.
In it, there's a picture of Spider-Man, and he has an X drawn over his face. Mm-hmm. And next to it, it says Mysterio is right. This is a reference to Uncanny X-Men, okay? So here it is. That's Cyclops right in the front. In these things, he's in this storyline, his helmet is not one visor, it's got an X, which is super cool. Again, Cyclops, one of my all-time favorite characters, never gets the credit he deserves. In the storyline, without going through the storyline, basically, Cyclops is kind of becomes like militant, radical, revolutionary kind of guy. And Wolverine ends up continuing the school. And you have two different X-Men teams kind of happening at the same time. But Cyclops is a terrorist, basically. And the first image I want to show to you is these. This is when they compile these books, they have variant covers in the back.
Yeah.
This is one of the protests that's going on, and they're carrying a Cyclops sign. What ends up happening is the people, mutants and humans in general, end up deciding, like, kind of supporting Cyclops and his mission. But I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but all of these throughout this storyline, protesters are carrying signs that say Cyclops was right.
Oh, funny. Yeah, so
and they all look like this. So it's an X over his face. It's like the Cyclops like logo over his face, or an X-Men logo over his face, and it says Mysterio is right. And I have not seen anyone comment on it. And in the theater the first time, I was like, oh, cool, it's like an X-Men reference. Huh. I haven't seen it anywhere. That's an exclusive for this show.
Nice. Well, on that note, since we've spoken for quite a bit of time here, we should jump into this Joker thing now that we said we would. So this Joker.
Hey, wait, this episode's hashtag is no new goblins.
Okay, no new goblins. All right, cool.
Or no old goblins. I don't know.
Yeah, hashtag no old goblins. Okay, I like that. So after we put the episode up, this clip comes out with the new clip, another clip of the new Joker. And this is my initial thought after watching it was, I was like, oh, this is not a deleted scene. Like, yes, they did shoot this scene at the same time as the movie, but they were literally, this was never going to go into the movie. It
Yeah.
would take way too much away from the central villain being the Riddler, you know? But there is,
Sure.
but I do really like one thing that it does, but let me just tell me what you thought about it first.
I really liked it. I really liked it because it's actually very classic Batman. Pretty sure there's a Long Halloween bit where he starts going to Calendar Man, who's in prison, and he starts asking him about the holiday killer, because he's like, you know, he thinks that he'll have some sort of insight into it. So from that context, I really liked it. From the context of what do I think of this Joker, I really liked it.
Yeah, I thought he was funny. I thought he did seem, people are like, oh, everybody does. And I also thought, okay, I thought he came into his own over the course of the scene. At the beginning, he's doing those Heath Ledger mouth noises, you know? And
Sure.
I was like, okay, but then his voice starts to be more of his own thing. It almost felt like a deliberate choice to start out and almost like Heath Ledger mode, and over the course of a scene, find your way to your own Joker voice.
Okay.
But he did seem kind of funny. I like that he had almost this like romantic like language, though he was talking to Batman. And I love this idea that he's already a known quantity to Batman. Like, that's an interesting reveal to the story, right? That he said it's our year anniversary. So
okay, great. I don't remember that, but awesome.
He said it's our anniversary, or like, oh, and this is what you got me for the anniversary or something. And it's like, so about a year ago was whenever Batman like first busted the Joker. And so I love the idea that their relationship is already a known thing.
Me too.
And that Batman would go to him to ask him a question. I'm like, this is such a cool relationship. Then, and I love that idea, like the Hannibal Lecter kind of relationship, instead of you know, but one that we don't get to see the beginning of. I love that. I love that we don't get to see the beginning of it. I love that the Joker is sort of starts teasing Batman with this idea that he thinks the people that the Riddler is killing deserve it, and that he appears to be right. And but the problem is, we already got past Batman learning that lesson, or seeming to, at the end of this movie, right? Like the end, like Robert Pattinson's final monologue is about not being vengeance anymore. You know, he has and instead learning to be like more heroic. So I started to kind of try to solve this problem in my head. I tried to put on my like Kevin Feige hat of being like, how do we keep this interesting idea in there? And then I thought, what if the next Batman movie takes place across two different timelines? Like, what if we do get to see some of Batman's first encounters with the Joker? So we get to still see young, angry Batman, and then we contrast it with whatever's happening now.
That's really interesting.
So I love this idea of like, what if the next movie is about something that happened before that we didn't get to see, that has implications for what's happening now in the, you know, after Riddler storyline, right? Like,
I love that. Okay, hear me out on this scene. Where do we think this happens? This happens maybe, you know, maybe
that's one way I know.
Into the movie.
One way I know it's not a deleted scene is because there's no scene before where Batman and Jim Gordon are talking, and Batman's like, I think I should go ask, you know, and then Jim Gordon's like, don't talk to him, he whatever, and he's like, no, he might know, you know, like there should be a scene like that.
Okay, I don't think you necessarily need that, but I think that there's a weird, you know, where would this take place? But hear me out. Keep this in the movie, or put it in the movie if you're correct of not. Put it in the movie. Remove the Joker and Riddler scene in the
Oh prison. Yeah, absolutely. That scene still has to go, no matter what.
well, yeah, that's true. It does. But I'm saying, what if you put this in? We got the tease on the Joker, but it was in a Batman interrogation kind of setting. We take that piece from the prison out at the end.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been a much better tease for the Joker than this stupid fucking scene where he's talking to him through the walls. You think that they're keeping the Joker up, like in holding, like where we're going to have the Riddler show up? No way. This guy's if this guy's been in prison for a year, then he has caused problems for a year. There is
Yeah, that's
no
true.
way they would put him in a hole somewhere and, you know, maybe feed him every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah, that's true. But I do think, okay, I don't think he should look so bad. Like, I just think this
he's disgusting looking, for sure.
I think about the actors even too, and I'm like, this is miserable. Why are you going to put Barry Keoghan through that much time in the makeup chair every single day? I mean, there's somewhere between Jared Leto's Joker and this, you know, and I just think there's I don't know. I would prefer the Joker look a little more normal.
If I was in that room though, I do like the idea of if the Joker is supposed to, if we're going to take the comic book Joker thing where he like fell into a vat of chemicals and it made him go crazy like this, okay, your skin would look kind of fucked up.
That's
and
true.
Everything like that. So my first thought is it's kind of more accurate to what he would really look like because he's disgusting. He really does seem like an amalgam of all these Jokers. Like he even has the Heath Ledger paint. And like the way that he talks, you can kind of feel a lot of different influences there.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good way to go if you're an actor. Like you're like, am I gonna recreate this thing that has been already like turned into it's a whole thing to recreate him?
Right.
You know?
I mean,
I think we're past that. So
everybody keeps pieces of Batman, you know?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
So that makes sense. I mean, except I would argue, except maybe for Ben Affleck, who, you know, Ben Affleck's Batman voice is kind of mechanical. And by the way, speaking of falling in vats, that's one of the funniest exchanges in Spider-Man No Way Home, is that you got to be careful where you fall thing. I love the idea that these people are coming from different universes. And so they come into this universe and they're like, magic? What? That's crazy. But then to them, like the idea that like, yeah, falling in buckets of stuff making you into a supervillain, that's a very normal thing that happens all the time. Like they come from a world where that's normal and magic is not. And they're like, there's magic here and people don't fall into buckets of stuff.
The "Are you in a band" joke is maybe the greatest joke in all three of these movies for sure, but maybe in all of the MCU. What's an Avenger? Are you in a band? That was so funny.
It's so Isaac's crying. It's speaking of children named after Parker. It's so funny that it's funny because of how nerdily it's delivered. Like, they are such dorks, and it's very funny to hear them being like that. Like the way, it's not like the way there's so many ways you can ask someone if they're in a band, and he asks him like it's him like it's maybe the coolest thing he's ever heard in his life.
He does, yeah, you're right.
And that's really the secret. That's the Andrew Garfield of it all, right? That's the Andrew Garfield magic. What are we gonna talk about next time?
I would defer that to you. I don't know, man. What do we want to talk about next time?
Well, it won't be time yet to talk about Moon Knight, because Moon Knight will have just started. Or did it start today? Tomorrow?
Oh, it does. Yeah, it does. It's like tonight.
Okay.
Or tomorrow.
So Moon Knight will be a future episode. But so maybe we should do Peacemaker next time.
Oh, I will happily talk Peacemaker. I'm so glad you watched it.
Yeah, so maybe we can alternate like Marvel and DC properties for a while.
We got to come up with a name for this thing, man. We got to come up with a more established name. You know?
Yeah, I know. All right, well, we'll think about that too. In the sound off in the comments. Tell us what this show should be called.
Yeah, for real. If you got a good one, we're gonna take it.
Yeah, we will. We'll send you a relative isolation sticker in the mail if you come up with a good name for the show.
Absolutely, we will.
Okay,
cool.
All right, well, I'll talk to you later. Thank you, Morgan. Bye, love you.
Thank you. Love you. See ya.